Part 2, the Plight of the Tribe of Ephraim. Matthew chapter 17. As I was trying to explain in the previous video, once you read this with Psalm 7 and the connection even with Judah as being Benjamin's keeper, where Benjamin was being framed into looking like a thief for stealing some sort of silver cup. Now you know that cup would be connected to genetics, and then this would be coming on back down to the Nubian occupation of Egypt, in which, it's just these secret societies' way of, putting the blame on other people for their own faulty perceptions of history. And many people have occupied ancient civilizations that have fallen to ruin and then adopted the mother culture and then sought to decipher and practice its customary ritual, if you will, and graft its religious and its artistic and its political order into their own, as their own. So the Nubians were no different. As like I said, many different cultures have done this. So the only blame that you can put on anybody is for the people with the faulty perception of these situations. So with the silver cup and the story of Benjamin, where the tribes had experienced famine in the land of Canaan, and then Jacob, their father, sent them into the land of Egypt to get grain. As I said, Joseph was then traded for the grain into what was supposed to be a life of slavery, and then Joseph rose to prominence. The next time the famine appears in the land of Canaan, the Israelite brothers go again, and then now Joseph requires that Benjamin is offered now for the sustenance of their life. In other words, this grain. Now keep in mind, Satan is the god of agriculture and grain. Osiris Orion is the god of agriculture and grain. So what happens is that, and you have to understand this because this is what it's all based on. It's all really that intricate. So what ends up taking place is that in the feed bags, the corn bags, the grain bags, Joseph has his servants implant a silver cup into the youngest of the tribesmen's bag, and it ends up being Benjamin's bag. A silver cup. A silver cup. Now remember about the cup in perspective of Revelation and Babylon, give unto her double. Double. This cup is comparative to a deeper understanding of all that, and then that cup is comparative to genetics. And then of course you see the genetics being displayed as the Holy Grail, in which is a cup. But then of course there's confusion on the description of the Grail between gold and silver, but it's neither gold nor silver in perspective of the societies. It's based upon iron. But then the symbolisms have to evolve in perspectives of the royalty and privilege, the power and prestige and the riches that follow that. And then we see the gold and the silver is comparative. My point is that Benjamin never stole no cup. Benjamin in reality was not a thief. He was being made to appear as a thief. He was being framed in the essence of a thief. And then this whole thing now is the basis for this vengeance and this repercussion of the servitude that follows it for these people, at least from these secret societies. And Jesus is warning. He's saying, look, do unto others as you're going to have done unto you. So somewhere in their skewed misrepresentation of history, they believe that they're justified in doing this because somewhere in the past something has been done wrong to them by peoples of darker color, as they have translated their best, but which has really resulted in the best of mistranslations, if you will, of these ancient records. So somewhere in there, they're seeking a vengeance against that, and you can find this connection here with the story of Seth, and then Seth being paired with darkness. They would apply this darkness of Seth into the manifest of actual dark-skinned people, but it doesn't apply. As I said, dark-skinned people are basically just a product of their conditional equatorial environment, And then, of course, the darkened skin develops over time, because if not, the skin would be progressively burnt over and over like fair-skinned people are. The darker skin can handle it. So it's just a product of the conditional environment. It's the adaptation of the evolutionary genetics of the people in question, in which any people have this ability to adapt, so to say. And then as we see, the fair-skinned people results from a more northern climate, which more clothing was put on, less sunlight acquired, therefore the adaptation into a lighter tone of skin. And then, of course, the blue eyes in perspective of that as well for the adaptation. But then there's a blue eye that's pre-adaptation, that comes in connection with the sons of God, and that comes in connection with the sons of Adam, and that you would need to find that out by reading further into the Urantia book. But nonetheless, so, do unto others as you'd have done unto you. You have to stop the cycle somewhere. So it doesn't justify it to keep this ravenous cycle going over and over with the serpent eating his own tail, the serpent eating his own kind. At least doctrinally, nationalistically, religiously, spiritually, metaphysically, and esoterically, they are incorporating these people into the great work and labor, but then are symbolizing them only as red and blue, which then would further symbolize the breaking of the water, and then, of course, the placenta, which is the red, which is only needed for the incubation, and then it's cast off after the birth. And then the water breaks and then just dissolves and goes away. You get it? So they're applying symbolisms to people that are not adept personally, spiritually, even with the spiritual spirit of truth, to understand the significance of what is really happening in the big picture behind the scenes of what all this is going on for. And as Jesus said, until the consummation of the crimes come to the full consummation, that's the birthing, as we know. This is not to bring mankind, as the faction of evil ones have led them to believe, into divinity. It's to lead one specific spiritual being into a mortal body to experience his supposed divinity in the flesh. And we know that's the abomination of desolation in which Jesus Christ has spoke about. Okay, so let's move forward here a little bit. The mote in all this stuff now comes in perspective with twigs and then grain. Now here's where we can identify Osiris Orion without a doubt, because once you translate what mote is better, you can get to that. As the moat translates back to a castle, you have to connect it to King Arthur, and then you're going to connect it to Camelot. And as I said, Camel is Gimel, and then Gimel represents Satan in an early rendering of the ancient record of the days of the Garden of Eden. And then Gimel comes from Gamal, and then Gamal is a symbolism for the G that is even connected to the number 3. That would then be comparative to what we see happening in Freemasonry with the number 33 between the mirror of the two threes, in other words, the two bulls in the pin, right? So if we got the moat, you got to put the moat in perspective, as I said, with a castle, because a castle is surrounded by a moat. So now the moon location represents a castle. If a castle comes into play, it's going to have to come into play with King Arthur. And then the Knights of the Round Table. And you know that King Arthur is Aryan. And then he's in connection with what? Sword in the Stone. Right? Sword in the Stone. So then the sword and the stone represents the rock and the roll. And as I said, you would read Zechariah chapters 4 and 5 to understand that. So we would see the Aryan thing come back down to the camel, to the camel Lot. And we know about Lot's wife, who was supposed to not look back. But what was she not supposed to look back to? And that was all that material privilege and richness of their city life, if you will. Right? In which we see that Babylon itself, ecclesiastical and commercial, is completely engrossed in this materialism. That they are completely looking back to. And would have everybody else believe that they're looking to some greatness of spirit. The greatness of spirit that they're looking into is the inversion of spirit manifest in matter. But as I said, it's the fallen prince's inversion into matter. It's got to be an inversion because he was never intended to. He's always supposed to be a spiritual being, but now he's lessened himself to a material beast. That's the abomination. So the mote now becomes relative with the twig for the eye of what we would see with the African. Give me a second. They're judging them because I said the mote within the eye comes into perspective with the African now from these guys' perception because they're judging. They're saying, you don't understand ancient history. You don't understand about the truth about the ancient Aryan gods, and that you have only perchance occupied and then somewhat grafted in the vestige of our original culture, and that you don't really know it. And then in essence they kind of lead them into thinking they're a part of this, and at the end they plan on duping them anyway, because it's the connection with the vengeance of Horus against Set. As I said, Set represents the god of darkness and chaos. It really doesn't represent these people, but they've applied it to them. It has a deeper meaning that comes back on down to Lucifer, Satan, and the devil. And then the devil would have to represent the personification of Set, which would be the personification of Enki, in which they call as the light bearer. But now he represents the personification of the birther of chaos, in which the ultimate agenda is to birth himself as the serpent of chaos from this chaos doctrine in which he's gotten these people to adhere to. And within this doctrine is the blood sacrifice doctrines. And then, of course, the it's void of mercy. It's void of righteousness and truth. It's void of the perfection of the love of God for all mankind, and therefore they can justify taking it out on their own. It's really that deep. It's really that deep. And so we come on down to the moat, which should be, in essence, revealing this connection now with Camelot, right? And these guys should see that this real location is what they're trying to say has a historical precedence in the ancient past for their like Aryan capital of the Most High's ruling this lesser world here. But because there's been this chaos taking place in the switcheroo in the past, somebody else got up there that was never supposed to be there. And then they blame it back on all kinds of stuff. And then they've gone up there to get them rid to not go up there, to not be there anymore. And then they get trapped up there, is what they're trying to say. And they're just saying our ancestors are only there, the Aryans, because they were going up there to dispose of somebody else. And that's what this imagery would be right here. And then these celestial objects in the sky with their like tails or their beards, their hair or their comas, their commas. Look at that. That's like a comma. That's where the comma develops from, guys, now that you think about it. Comma means hair, and then the hair comma is connected to comet, and then it's connected to the tail of a comet, and then now it's connected to the tail of a donkey or a nod key. So we see these celestial objects in the sky here, and then we see these Aryan looking kings with their rocket packs, arrows, in other words, these arrowsmiths, of course, standing on this platform. Of course, as you can see, the square and the compass, the zigzag line symbolizing the movements of the moon, now symbolizes even a strong platform, aka Baalbek, temple to Jupiter. And then we see now a symbolism of a lion that's being destroyed. Now this lion has wings which had the ability to get to a high location. But as we can see, we've learned that scripturally speaking in the record, they're saying that these guys couldn't make it back down. If you read Ezekiel 17, it says these vines that would grow him. He couldn't make it back down. Now he has to summon this other eagle from below to bring him his water, right? And then this is where we get the connection with the seal of the United States, with the eagle clutching a twig, bringing it up to the star tetrahedron, the symbolism of the blue, which then represents the blue bloods in location at the high place, which are really Aryans with the blonde hair. And that the blue bloods that are being made to think they're blue down here with all the other color hairs and all the other stuff with genetics are being duped into the connection with the red, which is being connected to the murder, the red rum. That's the blood. And incidentally, with Jamaica, it has an obsession with rum, just to throw that in there. And then how I'm connected to Jamaica with reggae music and what you guys would, call Rastafarians. But of course, I'm not a Rastafarian, but I know many. As I know many other people from many religions. I'm a child of God, but you could happily call me a Christian if you like. It makes no difference to me. The Father knows my heart. So, guys, it's all there. I'm sorry that I kind of go into some of the depth that I do about it. And then maybe I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about this here. You're staring at a meteor. And that's a meteor that I came across in somewhat of a supernatural way some time ago. And I've already had it analyzed. I'm not sure to the integrity of those that gave me the spectral analysis, but nonetheless, I know it's a meteor, and it's magnetized in the whole nine. So this fits in with me and all the other things about me in which you need to begin to start taking a more serious look at, because I'm not joking around here. I'm not joking around at all. So I'm not exactly sure where I left off at, but I'm going to kind of sum this back up with this connection with 6 and Saturn. Saturn being connected to grain. But what's connected with Saturn to grain, as I said, the Satans are the sons of Sam, which are connected to the sons of Orion. Osiris. Orion is the hunters of men. And we can see that in connection with the arrows, which now you see that in connection full-blown with these arrowsmiths, and then this hunting of men, which you see being symbolized as a lion. Now that represents the 2 bulls in the pen, just being symbolized furthermore as the sons of God, ancient symbolism of conquering lions, as I said, in which is being truly applied to Jesus Christ, because of course he is the chief of all the messengers of God. He's the chief of the entire universe in which we find ourselves wondering about the truth of God. Jesus Christ is it. So number 6 is Saturn. Saturn is the god of grain. And then Saturn connects back to Osiris Orion, the god of agriculture and grain. So if we can connect that successfully to line 6, Saturn, the 6th planet, Osiris Orion, the god of grain, what do we have next to connect? Well, that would be the dogs. The dogs that accompany Orion, the hunter. Now you see Orion the hunter, Osiris Orion, Ezekiel 17 says that he's sealed up there, the dude that looks like a lady up in the high place in the moon. So he's got these hunters down here, and those hunters are being represented by Betelgeuse, Procyon, and Sirius. Now the connection here I'm going to show you with the shape of this triangle here. Now this is going to leave no doubt that this is exactly what Jesus is talking about. And it's going to leave no doubt what their organization is trying to do by shifting the blame of this heritage and its real meaning, of which Jesus is talking about, away from them and their Aryan pride and identity on to a mistranslated and purposely projected lie of the tribe of Benjamin being connected to Seth. In which reality we know that Seth is really the serpent that went from this truth of his original heritage of bringing the perspective light of spiritual truth to this world in the name of Jesus Christ, in the name of the future name of Jesus Christ, but really at this point in the name of the eternal Son of God. And then he defaulted. And then of course took the sophistry of Satan being led into deception by Lucifer, and then now leads mankind through the sons of God basically into the worship of himself, now in essence creating the world into darkness. The spiritual light is gone. Now the obsession for the blood doctrine and the genetics and the heritage and the pride all comes into play, which he cleverly designs around himself, but everybody else is made to believe it has something to do with them. So you can see that the blue bloods represent the Aryan, which the original root for them, as they believe, is sealed on the moon. Anybody else down here is being lied to who they are. And as you can even see here, this connection with the dark hair is not getting the whole story. And it's very intense because these star colors will reveal the way. So as you can see, this is being the depiction of a birth, as we've been trying to describe. This represents the Black Widow. Black Widow is the shape, at least of a Black Widow spider, of a red hourglass on its abdomen. And you know that represents danger, because a Black Widow does what? Eats its own kind, aka eats its own mate, right? This would have to be the moon location. So what are these very peculiar colors that we see? Well, that would be red, white, and blue. You just see the red being depicted as orange because Betelgeuse itself goes between orange and red. And I've got the chart here to show you. So what you're going to see basically is the southern triangle. I've showed it to you before. Now, number 2 is Procyon. Procyon is white in its appearance. Number 3 is Betelgeuse, which is red in its appearance. And then number 1 is Sirius, which is blue in its appearance. Right? Now I said this is where we get Sirius, which is Isis Sothis, which is the connection with Jack Jashin Yarib, the dude that looks like a lady, connected from Genesis 6, the rib being taken from Adam being put into Eve, which now is a further mistranslation of what they think they understand with the connection of the sacred feminine within the book of Genesis, the Gene sisters. So you can see the red, white, and blue as it's being depicted here to you. Now the configuration would be, this is that triangle right here. And it's the same triangle that you see being skewed at this angle here. And then that's it right there. So this would be Betelgeuse, this would be Procyon, and then this would be Sirius. Right? That's exactly right. Notice that Sirius has the beetle on his back. Now that beetle represents the tree of Sephiroth, which is the tree of shadow magic Israel, the Kabbalah. And this, as you know, is a chart for the somatic cell, which is basically charting the sexual creation, the genesis of life. And then they are looking into this in perspective of bringing about this divinity of themselves. As I said, the code really is bringing him into that material form through the manipulation of the genetics and the genetic code stemming from Genesis 6. So this is without a doubt connected to Orion and these dogs, Canis Major. Now Canis Major comes on down to what? Cain. That's the root for the original spiritual truth of this connection to the dogs and the Cain, which comes back to the Cainites, which now comes back to the vengeance in Genesis chapter 4, verse 24. One of the dogs okay. Now, if we take verse 6 and we go back to Psalm 7 and show you verse 6, this fractal don't stop. O rise, O Lord, in thine anger lift up thyself because of the rage of mine enemies, and awake for me to the judgment that thou hast commanded. Now, as I told you, this is really a connection with the words of the tribe of Benjamin and his plight of persecution and sufferation by men around him, which are connected to these ancient blood doctrines, calling themselves the sons of Sam, as they've evolved to this day. But, and I said you have to allow the simple soul and the emotion of the writers that have been influenced by this spiritual record to be seen, and that they have always, in a sense, judged God by their own emotions. So therefore, anger has been applied and vengeance has been applied in all these perspectives, in which what you know that Jesus says is that it's the wages of sin is death. He doesn't seek to kill or destroy nobody. Doesn't have to. You can be blinked out of existence just like that. There is no war. There is no battle against Jesus. But the battle is for man is to overcome his own debased passions, his own material beastly nature, in which these people are being taught to embrace it. And Jesus is saying, no, that's not the way to go. That's the way to eternal annihilation. That's the way to non-existence. Those things are the beastly nature is not existent in the distances of eternity. Only the higher perfected sought spiritual path of brotherly love for all under the universality of the Father and paradise. That's what's there. And if you can adhere and graft to that, you'll be there as well. From that original taproot of truth, the spirit of truth that has given everybody in all eyes, regardless of 1, 2, or 3, the opportunity to see. So I believe, as I said, that this represents the words of the Cushite Benjamin, expressing his plight and his sufferation at the hands of his persecutors, and that certain buzzwords of human emotion has been applied to the Father himself, and certain overlays of the historical context of the misrepresentation of the ancient God of the Hebrews in connection with this brazen serpent that we see Moses lifted up in the wilderness, which would be known as the caduceus, which connects back to Enki, the Nahesh, the serpent, the supposed light bearer, which in all reality is obstructing the light, as we see on the seal of the dollar bill, and he becomes this god of darkness and chaos himself, which would be Set, which is now Ra-Set, the sun god of darkness and chaos. But they're trying to hide all that from you and then apply this onto lesser forms of a lesser realization of the truth, and in which I said it's always the highest reflection of truth. The highest reflection of truth never reflects the lie. It always has to reflect the original root of truth, not the root of truth that is tapped into these waters of death in connection to their god of darkness and chaos, the god of death, Osiris Orion, which is not a god to resurrection to eternal life. He's a god to the resurrection of the judgment of the eternal fires of damnation. At least all those that follow him and then adhere unto him eternally. You can't live eternally, therefore you will be non-existent. But Jesus says he's not going to lose a single one except the son of perdition, which translates to 3, Lucifer, Satan, and the devil. Now, that's at this point. Who am I to say that Satan and Lucifer have not already turned back, and that all we have now here is the devil, the fallen prince of this world, who's nursing his own pride and hoping to come into this material deitized form at the cost of everyone else. You know what I mean? So when the Bible says these sons of perdition, perdition is destruction, obliteration, wasting, and then that is exactly what we've seen take place in this world as manifest due to this doctrine of the supposed light-bearing serpent. So they're trying to hide all this in the origination of the connection with the Aryan connection to the Nephilim. And if you want to go find out further, go look into the birth of Noah. The birth of Noah, he had white hair and fair skin, and his eyes shone forth like the sun. And the legend says he could speak at birth, and he blessed the name of God. The white hair, that's the blonde hair. It wasn't red hair, it wasn't black hair, it's white hair. And this represents the original line for the origin of the blue bloods, which I said if you look at the seal with the eagle, and his objective is showing you that blue and that tetrahedron represents the seal, which is now representing the moon location in which these original Aryans find themselves due to Ezekiel 17. Right? So if we go to verse 12, and he turned not, he will whet his sword. That's Isaiah 34. He hath bent his bow and made it ready. Now, this is where I'm trying to tell you that God has an original, symbolically, you know what I'm saying? This arrow, that's what meteors are called in ancient times. They're called arrow lights. Arrow lights. Okay, here's an arrow light right here in my possession, and I can show you the spectral analysis. There's a rimoglyph called a thumbprint. Perfectly fits my thumb. Isn't that nice? Wow, look at that. Okay, you see this? That is a meteorite, and it quite probably could be something connected to a lunar meteorite, which they say is very rare. It's amazing how the Spirit has put that into my hands. But I want you to see where the mistranslation comes from, where the Benjamites, at least this vein of truth being found within the dialect of the Cushite as it's being recorded in the Bible, is connecting his sort of redemption at the hands of his persecutors through the connection of these arrows once again. And this is where the 11:11 mirror comes into play, where you see Osiris Orion is promoting these very same eras of destruction and chaos. As I said, it could be more rightly viewed in connection with rockets and bombs. But then we see that there's a real synchronicity of irony, if you will, of all these things that take place in the material manifest that are pervaded by the infinite spirit. We had had another audio outage. It happens every 10 minutes for 10 seconds, right? And I can't see the numbers because the numbers are white on the screen, and then it's a white background on this Bible. So that's why you see me move the book all around, always trying to get it against a dark background so I can see it. And that's the way sometimes that a mortal can only recognize the spirit of truth as it's weighed against the contrasting background of the actions of a darkened evil, but not against the background of a conditioned people that have evolved that way due to the product of their conditional environment, from micro to macro, in which now could be a perspective of the equatorial region, which now becomes in perspective of the supposed persecutor who sees himself as the equalizer with the equilibrium, as the equator created a deceptive conditional environment, which is turning individuals darkened in an adaptation process due to the doctrine that they've been given, which would become now the PC, predeterminate condition based upon rebellion. Now that PC has everything to do with the relativity of knowledge increasing through the personal computer, which has been sponsored in essence in its greatest growth by Apple, symbolizes itself with a singular bite taken out of it. We know that they've tried to put that in perspective of other peoples of color taking these bites of the apple, but it's only the apple of the wicked orchard in which they have grown themselves after taking the original fruit themselves, which was cursed, and that is this doctrine of calling oneself God. So I think that you can see there, the hunters of men have Osiris Orion being sealed in the moon, now has dogs doing the hunting and the bidding for him. And then we would see Sirius is Isis, right? Sirius is Isis. And then Isis represents sacred feminine, represents Jesh and Jack, Yarib, dude that looks like a lady. Okay? Very, very simple. And the connection that I was reading to you earlier, it's 40 days long between July 3rd and August 11th, 3114 BC. Or July 3rd and August 11th, 40 days long. And that's where Isis Orion, the star Isis connected with Orion, doubles the heat of the sun. It's called the dog star. Interesting. Okay? So you can see that Jesus knows what he's talking about. And I've been led into understanding what he's talking about, you know? And I want you to see right here that that's what he's talking about. So 6 is Saturn. Saturn's connected with grain. Saturn's connected with Osiris Orion, the god of grain. And then now Orion, the great hunter, has dogs that accompany him in this hunting of men that in essence are stationed here, being that symbolic other 3 that would be the symbolism of the 1-3 that is sealed on the moon, calling himself in essence Gemal, that we know as the camel Satan. Right? But we see sons of Sam expressing themselves as wanderers are seeking to go there themselves. And then there's sons of Sam that are expressed as nomads and wanderers that by the description of the history are already there and sealed. That water has been brought there, water will still be brought there, and it's being brought there right now. And then of course it's no doubt it's the moon location, as the Spirit reveals. So, wow, you really have to be on point. And then you now just start reading the rest of this in the tone of the understanding which you know it's truly connected to. We see this connection here. Chapter 7 goes back also to the story of Cain and Abel, which I said is the original root as it's described through the line of Cain, which then connects itself through Canis Major, right? Now, major is what you would think of with military rank. And as I said, this Babylonian kingdom has always been militant in its action of force being applied to the people. Fulfillment of Deuteronomy 33, the unicorns pushing the people to the ends of the earth. That's forcing them in essence. Okay? To the ends of the earth, in essence, is into the New World Order, but yet it's further away from the solidarity of the harmony of the people themselves. It's pushing them away to the ends of the earth, not from the harmony of the people, but away from it into the conception of the New World Order, which is the fulfillment of that doctrine, divide and conquer. Now, at least in a material manner, because there's a divide and conquer in a spiritual manner, is there not? Is there not? Absolutely. Jesus Christ says that he didn't come to bring a bunch of peace. He come to set mother against daughter and father against son. And that was within these doctrines of these people that are here too. If you're going to believe in this stuff, well, his spiritual truth, like a sword, will cut you asunder. It will cleave you from the waters of life if you are still drinking these murky waters connected to these iron maidens. Isis, Osiris, Orion, the Iron Cross, the planet of double crossing people. Double. You know what I mean? Not single crossing, but double crossing. Remember, it's X chromosome, right? And then this guy right here thinking he's all slick Willy. And I'm not doing that to hurt Will Ferrell's feelings. I'm not doing that to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm doing this to hope you realize that you're going to hurt yourself. And that you're all thinking that the leaders are going to hurt me. Ain't nothing going to happen to me. They're going to take me. They're going to lay their hands on me. But that's when the real spirit work begins for me. You know? And then everybody else is going to have their own spiritual work as well. And hopefully, and God willing, you're going to understand what it's all about. You know? Let me see if I can find some stuff here that I got to help you understand better. This is a video that I did about that camel that I discovered looking through some other stuff. And I discovered this, and then I realized what the real meaning of this camel was. As I found out the meaning of this hippopotamus, which is connected to Seth. Seth turned into a giant red hippopotamus, and one of the stories connected with Osiris, Orion, in the battle of Horus and Seth. And there I have the hippopotamus there, even right beside the rocket that looks like a kernel of grain with the 666 right there, right above the head of the fallen prince, even connected with the name Ben Elohim, which you can see now connected and being applied unappropriately to Benjamin. But here comes a believer in the truth of Jesus Christ, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, in perspective of the goals of Judah as being his brother's keeper, right here to reveal the truth as best as I can. And I'm appealing to your childlike nature of your most basic principles of love, compassion, loyalty, and honesty. You know? I'd like to quote some things about the Native Americans, or just one thing in particular to think about. They never knew what a lie was until the white man started telling them. They never knew what a lie was till the white men started telling them. They could not fathom that somebody would speak a falsity out their mouth. You know, it just wasn't done. And then here come the white men. And it was all these falsities being spoke so that they could once again gain over their brothers of different mothers, different colors and regions and spiritual perspectives. And then they try to put this off onto everybody else over and over and over again, and think that everybody's fools and everybody's in this box, and that you can't see that you're being made a joker and a jester. You know what I mean? Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am stuck in the middle with you. Well, I tell you, I hang out with these jokers and these jesters. You know? I'm not stuck in the middle with these guys right here. You know what I mean? I have something at the center of me, which is the truth of Jesus Christ. And as I showed you with that symbolism of the wheat penny, symbolizing even Abraham connection with wheat, the penny, that copper tone being spun by those manipulative forces that If you are centered on the truth of Jesus Christ, you're going to be okay. They're trying to spin these guys out here, making this guy the object of everybody's desire. But once you're being spun out here, if Jesus Christ is your real truth, you're going to be all right. Jesus Christ is your real truth, not just some passe, quasi experience you've just briefly begun to entertain. You might still be caught in the progressive inertia of previous actions of the organization that you're already in. You know, you might already be in the repercussion of an eventual recompense that's out of your control. You know, but I know that you can pray for mercy and will receive it. If you sincerely knock, he's going to come in and he will sup with you and deliver the waters of life and the truth and the word of the real living bread of eternal life. I'm not kidding you. And you don't have to go through any initiatic orders or degrees to understand the fullness thereof. The fullness thereof is the eternal brotherhood of God of all mankind under the universal Father in paradise. That's the highest truth. You didn't have to go through a shitload of initiatic orders and pay tribute to all sorts of other men and ritual and ceremony to find it. But within it is everything that is anything of truth. The furthest of all complexities of the sciences that you could understand, down to the most basic of principles of human existence, of coexistence with one another, is all contained within that proclamation. It's all there. It's all there freely already given. And then the paradise equation could be had, but they reject it. They reject it for some sort of promise of divinity for themselves if they commit the atrocities of the dreams of another. And it's only gotten them the destruction of each other, those peculiar brothers. You know? Unreal. Spirit didn't play no games with me. And then even look at this right here. 7-7. See that? 7-7. Incredible. What are we showing you right now? Psalm 7 against Matthew 7. Anybody notice that little mouse down there? Unreal. Just don't get any more intense than that. Look at this star tetrahedron ain't no joke either. Notice the eyes and notice the mirroring. All of it is in perspective, and I've noticed it, and I need to do the video on it because it fulfills what I was showing you guys in the Mirror series with that astral projection, those hemispheres of the brain. It fulfills who's really looking only at himself, and then everybody else is being locked in this house of mirrors. And it's even correct with the philosophy of how I've tried to reveal it. It just is amazing. It's amazing. So we'll read this real quick and we're going to close the video. Little guy in the eye. I was looking up something and I came across this. I think it's from this website or whatever. If you Googled it, this guy Levi Madison wrote it, Mark of the Beast. It was about As Above, So Too Below, stating how a mystic reads The Garden of Eden by Rabbi David Cooper. One of the most ancient midrashic texts written by Rabbi Eliezer suggests that the serpent who seduced Eve had the appearance of a camel. And I put exclamation marks there because as I found that, then I knew. Most people have never heard this before. The Jewish oral tradition goes on to say that the angel Samiel, otherwise known as Satan, rode this camel. When Rabbi Eliezer says that the serpent represented a camel, he's alluding to the number 3. The word camel in Hebrew is gamal, which is the same word as the Hebrew letter gimel. Gimel in the Hebrew alphabet represents the number 3. Mathematically, the number 3 is necessary for the physical world, which is 3 lines of direction: north, south, east, west, up and down, or length, width, and height. Okay, and then you have the 4D, which is the time or the perception of time equated between them based upon the observer's rate of travel between the points. Now that can be spiritually and materially. The letter G symbol of Freemasonry traces back to the Hebrew letter Gimel, and interesting links to the serpent as well. It is said that the letter G also reps the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, donkey, pin the tail on the donkey, which represents immortality, resurrection, aka the Shen ring. So you can see that I'm not just, blurting out a bunch of stuff here, that I'm telling you this root of all this, through the truth of Jesus Christ. So you can see here that this birth through this connection of what we see being paired symbolically as dogs. Jesus Christ said they've spurned his truth. They would strain the net, which is based upon not his imperfection, but the imperfection of people that have recorded spiritual word. And that they pick out the smallest of things to reject the most ultimate of his saving grace, which is the simple truth of do unto others as you would have done unto you, and love the Father with all your might. Those are the 2 greatest of commands, which really is one singular commandment itself. And he says they would strain the net, which is not even his imperfection. It's the imperfection of those that seek to record the spiritual word, and instead they'll choose to swallow the camel. Who would camel be? Well, that'd be the doctrine of Satan in connection with the supposed perfected identity of Enki in the material form. And it's all right there. And Jesus has been saying it the whole time. They don't let you understand that. They want you to just be wrapped up in a bunch of BS, which is literal bullshit. You know what I mean? High sand, the third eye. You know what I mean? And then Gimel represents what? Number 3. Number 3. Third eye, high sand. What does a camel represent? Desert, sand. You know what? The spirit, you can't stop the spirit that's within me, and that has been within countless others like me. You can't stop it. The only thing that you can do is change your course for the better way, and embrace your brothers, regardless of who they are, what they've done, where they've come from, where you think they're going. Embrace them in love, mercy, truth, and compassion. This is how we make a better world. That's how we make a better world, with mercy and compassion, not birth out of wedlock based upon a gestation of confusion and chaos and darkness. That's an Iron Maiden right there, you know what I mean? But even the symbolism here with the dark hair is alluding to even their own that have been used expressly back through the Hebrew in connection with the dark hair, which is really misunderstanding even the further Aryan roots that would be connected, as I was trying to show you here with this guy swooshing over from this side to this side now, right? Notice his hair. Notice all those cross-hatching X's in connection with the seal. Now that would be connected to ice, as we know, the north. And then Satan is connected with the north. He's connected with materialism. And then as we see, this individual was connected with riches and materialism in the movie. Now, who is being shown getting the fire here? Well, it's Will Ferrell being shown getting the fire in this instance. And it's all of those hardcore rocker type commercial Babylon music industry, Hollywood Babylon bad boy, James Dean wannabe rebel guys that are getting the shaft from old Ephraim. They're getting effed up the ass, because that's what Ephraim does. He effs his own asses. That's what the Ouroboros is. A boro is what? It's an ass. It's a donkey. So when you say meat eater, you're saying meteor. Eeyore, at least in Winnie the Pooh, was a donkey. Eeyore, meat eater, meteor. Come on, guys. They can't. The only thing that they can do at this point now is try to stop me by snatching me. They want to snatch me up, right? But that's what the Spirit wants. They read the prophecy. That's why they hesitated on doing it. That's why they've hesitated in doing it. You know what I mean? And hey, I'm not. I'm here to tell you. You do this, you're going to suffer the repercussion of your own action. What you set forth, what you put in, you getting out, right? And what you get out, you've put in. Goes around, comes around. And if you want to keep justifying, you're saying, well, it's been done to you and you don't like it and you're so upset about it. Well, don't do it to nobody else. Because that's not what you want. Do unto others as you'd have done unto you. If you didn't like it, why are you going to do it to anybody else? And I'm just speaking in perspective of their construed doctrine of it, because that's not what happened. But that's what they think happened. Lean not on your own understanding. What is leaning on something? That's a Cain. Canis? And those dogs, where dog is God spelt backwards in a mirror. And then we can see this represents those ravenous dogs that were just eating up the regurgitation of this doctrine of supposed truth. You get it? And then they would push that on all of us through the manipulation of their minds from their initiatic order that has deceived them and rigidly abused their spiritual understanding and molded it into some sort of material construct of abomination. And then they want to hold me accountable. Go for it. I can stand before your court, your kangaroo court, Judge Jack, JJ, Dynamite, JJ, Jashin, Jack in the Box. What's coming out the box, supposedly? That's supposed to be a jester, right? That's a JJ. Remember the show Good Times, 1970s Good Times? Who was the main character? JJ. What did he always say? He's Kid Dynamite. What's a kid? Kid's a goat. And then dynamite is boom, bomb, explosion. Yeah, there will be a big explosion. See what I'm saying? It's all been there the whole time. What is JJ? He's real tall and he's real slim. Right? Slim Jim. Right? Slim Shady, SS, Moon, the slim thing. See what I'm saying? So they've been applying and forcing this on to the code of the Benjamites, aka through the Africans, Nubia, Cush, and Ham. Ham, New York City is called what? Gotham. Connecting back to Esau, even derivative of the name within Jesus. Relates back to Earth Pig, at least through the Kabbalah. So they have got a vendetta and a vengeance against what? Judah, at least the truth of it, as being the keeper of who? Benjamin. Cushites, brothers of different mothers. They don't like that. They want to see the Aryan thing exalted, when in all reality, it's the children of God entirely exalted under the supreme truth of the fatherhood of God, which is expressly motivated by mercy. Mercy. Mercy is the chief motivation of the Father. These guys got it so wrong that I don't think that they understand what they're really creating here, you know? It's why they're just considered truly blind. Absolutely blind. I wrote some other things I should probably read to you. This is just in a video. I think it kind of goes on. This is kind of might sum up some stuff. Iron box on head. Remember that was that phylactery we were looking at? That tradition of the Jewish Orthodox. Iron box on head, sons of iron, Orion are the intended vessels. So that's that high sand, that box on the forehead. So an iron maiden is needed to produce the stock. The line of Cain provides the genetic line for the future construction of a suitable body for the fallen prince. which is connected to the story of Isis putting back together Osiris into a constructed material form based upon the harvesting of his semen, aka the genetics and DNA, which then leads back to a very peculiar story of Seth and Horus and some sort of piece of lettuce, and then some sort of moon disc that was to be on Seth's head. And then the Seth head represents now the third eye, which is the illumination. And then we see that Horus, Quasi-Thoth, steals the disk of the moon from the forehead of Seth and then wears it on his own, which is representing that divinity, which is now taking away that connection with the lefty, of which Benjamite is connected to the right-hand hemisphere of the brain. As they have, in a sense, translated correctly and incorrectly simultaneously. Cain provides the fallen atoms which were needed by the law of spirit free will. Seal must be broken. Enki Horus, spirit-inspired father of Horus, aka Nephilim, son of the dark sun, empire of the black sun, which is that city of the black sun, as you see being shown to you here symbolically from the Bible, where it says that city is divided into 3 parts. The Vatican in this instance represents that spiritual abomination that is connected to this sacred feminine through the reverence of the supposed Virgin Mary, which would be further connected back to Osiris and Isis, in which now you see there's no way that symbolically Isis even represents the Virgin, even in their own doctrine. As you can see, if this is supposed to be the wedding and the union of the bride, the unification of heaven and earth, the moon and the earth, that's the heaven. Well, you can see she's already been pregnant for some time now, which means she had a consummation, or she had an inappropriate sexual relation before the appropriate consummation of the wedding, which has resulted in the bastard child, which has resulted in her, in essence, leaving her first love and then now falling in love with another. And that would be the gods of rigid law. And then this becomes the god or the father-in-law that they are further portraying in reference now with the orphan who had this father and this mysterious identity of this past. You get it? You get it? So they've got it really screwed up, and they're really planning on doing a lot of bad stuff to a lot of people, as they have been doing for a while. And then Jesus has, it's not happened to them. They've seen the fulfillment of these types of prophecies before on lesser reflections, as it has been building on these world age stages. But you got to remember, it's this final judgment at the end of this time of sevenfold. And as we can see in this perspective, this is when the real ending by the father of all that is, through his spiritual faction, of this wicked system. The Father is going to remove this cancer from off the face of this earth. And it's not people. It's not people. They do that themselves. It's the ideologies, it's the cancer that's grown within the mind of the peoples that has been originated by this supposed light-bearing serpent, who has really done nothing but promote chaos and blood doctrines, which is all based upon himself as being the center of that blood. You know what I mean? So I think this video has been long enough at this point. I hope that you understand that Jesus is talking about exactly what I'm talking about. There's no denying it. There's no denying it. You know what I mean? So if you want to hold me accountable, I'm ready. You go for it. You go for it. You don't understand. Dan is a lion's whelp. You've been showing yourself as a full-grown lion. Hurt not one of his little ones. I'll be back.